The man who has been in prison for 19 years was released today, but the prison chief deliberately made it difficult for him so that he carried the heavy flagpole, which was the last day of his rehabilitation. This is simply an impossible task, but Arang is born to be a god. He clenched his teeth tightly, stepped forward steadily, and dropped the flagpole heavily in front of the prison chief. The prison chief signed a release document with a heavy heart, but it was marked extremely dangerous on it. Arang must report to the police on a regular basis, otherwise he will be arrested again for breaking the law. In the eyes of the prison chief, the criminal is always the criminal. He warned Arang to be careful after he was released. If he fell into his hands again, he would be worse, often dead. Arang was very angry. He just stole a small piece of bread for his almost starving nephew and was sentenced to 19 years in prison. He did not regain his life after being released from prison. That ID card was like a humiliating mark. Everyone despised him and no boss was willing to hire him. Arang was like a street mouse, which could be beaten and expelled at will. This unfair world made him suffer from cold jail and torture. On a cold night, Arang slept in front of the church and was woken up by a kind priest. The priest not only provided him with food, but also let him sleep on a warm bed. But Arang no longer believed anyone. He took advantage of the priest's sleep and stole all the silverware. But Arang was soon caught by the police. But the priest said that he gave the silverware to Arang and handed over the 2 candlesticks to him. He said that you forgot to take the most precious thing. The police did not pursue the matter anymore. The priest told Arang with heart and soul that he regarded today as God's arrangement. You have to make good use of these silverware and become a true and upright person. He priest's words and deeds touched Arang and his soul was saved. He also let go of his hatred for this unfair world. He sincerely swore to God that from now on, he would change his mind and be a new person. He destroyed the ID card directly. He was reborn in a new identity. 8 years passed in a blink of an eye. Under the tyranny of the king, the people lived in poverty. There were homeless people everywhere on the street. At that time, Arang opened a textile factory with those silverware and hired poor people to work for him. Because of his kindness, people respected him very much, so they elected him as the mayor. Unfortunately, because of his promotion, Sha Wei became the police chief. He had to work under Arang from then on. When they first met, Sha Wei was eager to show his loyalty in front of his new superior. Arang recognized Sha Wei at a glance, and Sha Wei just felt that Arang was a little familiar. At this time, a loud noise was heard outside. It was a carriage. An old man was pressed under it. The situation was critical. Arang tried to lift the carriage with great force, but there was a woman who was pressed under it. But he also successfully hooked Sha Wei to his plan. But there was no solid evidence. Sha Wei dared not report to the mayor. In Arang's factory, there was a female worker named Fong Ting. Because of her appearance, she had been harassed by her supervisors. Other female workers also excluded her because of jealousy. In the early years, Fong Ting was pregnant. After giving birth to her daughter Cosette, her boyfriend abandoned her cruelly. In order to maintain her status, he could only adopt her daughter to a hotel couple and pay a high amount of alimony every month. In the 19th century, people's thinking was conservative and feudal. The true nature of women was seen as more important than life. A colleague told everyone that his fiancée was pregnant. The supervisor hated him because he had been molesting Fong Ting, so he forced her out of the factory in order to pay for her daughter's alimony. Fong Ting, who used to pay attention to her appearance, first sold the long hair that had always been proud of her, then 2 beautiful eyebrows, a bald head, and a pointed head. He simply broke the jar and broke the broom and started a war. His life was humble and awkward. Every night, he suffered a painful life. But for the woman who sent him away from home, this great mother gradually cultivated to accept everything. But when a peeper molested her, the man in winter still stuffed a bloodstain in her clothes. She was completely enraged. She rushed up and grabbed the peeper's face. The shameless peeper called for the police to kill Wei and accused Fong Ting of harassing her and hurting herself. After seeing the wound, Sha Wei recognized that the evidence was conclusive. Fong Ting begged this Wei like a wolf. For the sake of his daughter who was arrested, he wanted to spare her once. But Sha Wei, who had a heart of stone, still insisted. He recognized Fong Ting at a glance and was once a female worker in his own factory. So he doubtfully asked her the reason. Fong Ting helplessly said it was because the peeper fired himself that he came to this state. After hearing this, Arang felt very ashamed. He vowed to cut Fong Ting to pieces. In the name of God, he would be responsible for this matter to the end, regardless of Sha Wei's obstruction. He insisted on sending Fong Ting to hospital. A few days later, Sha Wei received a reply from the Paris Bureau of Investigation. It turned out that he had doubts after meeting the mayor for the first time. So he wrote a letter of report to the Bureau of Investigation. Now the reply said that the fugitive criminal Arang had been arrested. This made him very ashamed of his suspicion of the mayor. He took the initiative to apologize to the mayor's office. After hearing this, Arang did not blame him, but let him work in peace. But after Sha Wei left, Arang was in a dilemma. If he didn't speak up, he would still be respected by others. He would still be the boss of a grand factory. But there was an innocent person who had to face a prison because of his lookalike. When Arang was in a dilemma and had no choice, he saw the candlestick given to him by his teacher. Suddenly, he was in a daze. He hoped that this fire would be passed down step by step. If he didn't stand up, he hoped that it would be extinguished sooner or later. Arang rushed to the court without hesitation. He confessed everything in front of the judge, proving that the person next to him was innocent. After that, he left the court in a hurry. When he came back to the hospital, he wanted to end the last thing in his mind. And at that time, Fong Ting was already in a daze. He entrusted his daughter, Cosette, to Arang. After getting the other party's solemn promise, Fong Ting quietly left this miserable world. At that time, Sha Wei also went to the hospital to arrest Arang and clean up his many years of stain. Arang asked him to give himself 3 days to settle Fong Ting's daughter. But Sha Wei thought this was just an excuse for Arang to run away. With no choice, Arang could only jump into the river outside the window and run away. And Cosette, who was raised by the hotel owner, didn't feel a little warmth and happiness. Not only did he do some hard work every day, but he even let him wear a single-piece shirt on a winter night and go to the woods, alone to play in the water. Arang's appearance brought light to Cosette's miserable childhood. He spent a total of 1,500 yuan to get Cosette out of the hands of the hotel owner and promised him that he would take care of him in the future. "You are my daughter. I am your father." When the father and daughter just left, Sha Wei followed them to the hotel. He, who was empty, was unwilling to set up a checkpoint at the gate to check the past vehicles. Orang ran away with Cosette's car to search, but he was seen by Sha Wei riding a high military horse, galloping horses to catch the father and daughter. Orang, who was forced to walk headlessly, could only take Cosette to a church. Fortunately, he met the guardian Luo Wang. It was the old man who came out of the carriage when he took the risk. From then on, with the help of Luo Wang, Orang took Cosette to hide in the church and began a life of concealment. Sha Wei, who pursued Wu Bo again, stood on the city wall and swore to the whole city that he would bring the cunning Orang to justice and maintain the order and justice of the city. 9 years have passed. The French had a period of great revolution. People woke up in hunger and wanted to overthrow the military dictatorship and establish a democratic republic. Malice, a young nobleman, was also a member of the Revolutionary Army. He was in high spirits and had lofty ideals and beliefs in his heart. He met Cosette, who was in the church on the street and was helping the poor Orang. Such an angelic, beautiful, and kind girl made Malice fall in love with her at once. At the same time, the hotel owner, who was wandering on the street, also recognized Orang at a glance and tried to blackmail him again. So they were arguing for Orang to pay more money for Cosette. In the chaos, Sha Wei, the servant of the people, appeared. Orang, who was afraid of being recognized, dared not fight. He took Cosette away with him after returning home. Cosette, who was also moved by Malice, was very confused. What secret did my father hide? He's been hiding for so many years, but no matter how he asked, Orang refused to say anything. Just before the revolution, Malice finally found out Cosette's whereabouts from the iPad. She was afraid that she would not be able to live and die after tomorrow, so she decided to meet the person she missed in her heart. On the other side, Cosette, who also had lovesickness, happened to see Malice coming in the moonlight. The two looked at each other. Time seemed to stop. They opened their hearts to each other and exchanged their feelings for each other. But suddenly, Orang heard a noise outside the door. He immediately called back the girl. It turned out that the parents of iPad had become the dogs of Sha Wei. They secretly followed the iPad and found the hiding place of the father and daughter. With no choice, Orang had to bring Cosette back to the world again. Before leaving, Cosette left Malice at the door with his soon-to-be escape address, but was taken away by Malice's iPad. After so many years of love, it was impossible for the iPad to satisfy the two at this moment. Malice's sudden acceptance of Cosette was very painful, but she still decided not to follow Cosette's footsteps, but to stay and work with the revolutionary allies. The next day, Malice and her allies demonstrated on the street. They raised the flag of democracy and shouted for freedom. People were also infected and joined the march. The army and the police came to suppress them very quickly. Under constant friction between the two sides, the conflict continued to escalate. Although the rebel army was supported by the people, their weapons were much inferior to the army, so they were forced to retreat into the streets. At nightfall, the king sent the most elite army. In front of them, the rebel army was at a disadvantage. When the line of defense was about to be broken, Malice lit the torch with a dynamite and forced the army to retreat in the same way as before. In the conflict, Ipani saved Malice and blocked the bullets with her body. In a trance, she exchanged Cosette's letter with Malice, hoping that she could be happy. Malice was very sad and wrote a letter of farewell in despair. She asked someone to bring it to Cosette, but it eventually fell into Orang's hands. She was full of love for Cosette, but she still decided to sacrifice herself for the revolution, so she made Cosette forget herself. After reading the letter, Orang understood that Malice was doing a dangerous and great cause. Even if she would take away the pearl on her palm, Orang also decided to take the risk to save her. She disguised as a soldier and deceived the army, and successfully entered the inside of the rebel army. She saw that Cosette was taken as a spy by the rebel army. She asked everyone to let her deal with Cosette in person, so she took him to the back street and cut the rope with a knife. Cosette was very surprised, but he didn't appreciate it. He told Orang, "Even if you let me go today, I will still punish you in the future." But Orang calmly said that was Cosette's duty, and he wouldn't blame her. Cosette watched Orang be silent for a long time. His belief in himself was shaken for the first time, and he was punished for his crime, but the fugitive let himself go. So, is he really a criminal? When dawn broke, the army launched the final assault. Under the siege of gunfire, the rebel army's defense line was easily pierced. The allies also made heavy sacrifices. Malice was also seriously injured. Orang risked her life to drag her into the sewer and barely escaped. After the battle, Cosette took people to clean up the battlefield. She saw the young life all over the ground and was very touched. She took off the badge on her chest and gently put on the body of a child, hoping to make this innocent little life rest in peace. Cosette didn't find Orang's body. Hearing the sound of the sewer, she judged that Orang had escaped from the sewer, so she came to the city gate to wait for her. She waited for Orang, who was dead. She knew that Cosette would come to catch her, but Valice's life was in danger. Orang held the gun of Cosette and walked forward step by step, but until she left, Cosette didn't give up, because the justice she had been defending abandoned her. She always thought she was the evil Orang, but she had been doing justice. She was moved by the supreme law she had been defending. She had to admit that there was something higher than the law in this world, which was tolerance and love. In the end, Cosette's faith collapsed. She climbed down from the high bridge and ended her life of contradiction. A few days later, Valice finally woke up. She returned to the place where she had fought with her allies. She was full of sadness. Valice, who survived alone, felt that her life was meaningless. Cosette appeased the pain brought by the war for Valice with love. After 2 years of bloodshed, she finally got Orang's approval. But just one day before they got married, Orang told Valice about her identity as a fugitive. Valice was shocked after knowing it. Her attitude towards Orang suddenly became cold. Orang was worried that her identity as a fugitive would drag Cosette down in the future, so she left without saying goodbye. Soon, soon, Valis and Cosette had a wedding. Unexpectedly, the boss of the hotel also came to the wedding. He wanted to extort some money from Valis, but he accidentally revealed that Arung was in a coma. He listened to the order and saved her. Valis felt very ashamed. She was ashamed and covered her eyes. She was ashamed and covered her heart. She ignored the guests at the wedding and took Cosette to Arung. Arung was crying at that time, but she still missed Cosette. She hoped she could have a happy family. In a trance, she heard a familiar voice. It was Cosette and Valis who rushed to the church. They held Arung's hand tightly and repented their mistakes. As Arung's father, he only wanted them to be happy. At the end of his life, he handed his last letter of repentance to Cosette. He was carefree. He saw Valis coming to pick him up. At that time, Arung's soul could be revived. Her body could rest in peace under the company of her loved one. She closed her eyes peacefully and looked back at Arung's life. She almost struggled between good and evil, but she chose the former one over and over again. She used her conscience to wash away the stain of the soul and got the salvation of herself.